You're going to hear a lot about Project Starline in the future, but you don't have to wait. Julia LaRoche spoke with Alphabet and Google CEO Sundar Pichai about that and so much more. Julia?
Well, that's right, Adam. I'm back from Mountain View, California, where I did get to sit down with Sundar Pichai after Google's Google I/O Developers Conference. Keep in mind, they didn't have this event last year because of the pandemic. So you're talking about, 2 years since we've had this event where they talk about all of the newest products and technology, Starline being one of them that comes up in this conversation. But the part of the conversation we're about to show you is kind of, Sundar Pichai's story of how he got to Google. So take a listen.
She was part of the several people who interviewed me. It was on April Fool's Day, and we had just announced Gmail, which I thought was an April Fool's joke, except I was in the company and people asked me about what did I think of Gmail. It was an invite-only product, so in my first 4 interviews, I hadn't seen it, so I didn't know how to answer the question. My 5th interviewer was kind enough, said, "Would you like to see Gmail?" And I said yes, and showed me Gmail. And then I was able to start answering questions on it. So, I fondly recall, I think Susan took me during the middle of the day to get ice cream, which was it's not something I ever expected in any company through a day of interviews. So fond memories going back to that day.
Yeah, and I suppose fun as well. So you mentioned Gmail. What I've heard from a former Googler is that was created, internally, and then you all obviously tested it. It was great, and then you rolled it out externally. So I kind of want to go back to this future of work and flexibility. As you all kind of figure things out internally, is this something that you want to make external, like maybe productize? How do you think about that?
A lot of things we've built internally in the company, Gmail, etc., is a great example of it. When you think about Project Starline, which we announced yesterday, we are all doing that because internally we are trying to solve problems. And so how do we collaborate in this new world? And so any innovations we have as part of that, we are committed to bringing it outside and sharing it with the world as well.
And for folks who are watching, that's like that 3D video conferencing where they're full size and it feels like you're actually with the person.
Yeah, as close to
What
possible.
is the bigger unlock for that?
It is, the technology inherently is expensive, and so we are working on, any time in technology when the curve starts, something is very expensive, and then you work hard to bring it down so that more people can use it. So it's investing and making sure that happens.
Mm-hmm. So when you got to Google, did you ever think that you were going to be CEO? Did you ever have that moment where you thought like you wanted this job or you were going to be CEO?
But not for most aspects of doing it. That was the last thing in my mind. I was passionate about building products, and it's not what I was explicitly looking for. But later when the opportunity came, I was excited to do it. I think it's a privilege to be able to lead a company which is innovating and doing what's doing in the world.
You mentioned, your passion for products. Why do you think you were chosen for the job?
I think Larry and Sergey were always, had a long-term view and deeply believe in using technology to solve some of the hardest problems ahead. I share that worldview, and and I think it's that deeper sense of understanding we have is probably what I think contributed to it.
How does your vision differ from the founders?
I think at a more fundamental level, we are aligned in how we approach our work. There are differences, and Larry and Sergey are both. The combination of the two of them, they are the most extraordinary out-of-the-box thinkers I've ever worked with, and I still talk to them regularly, and so I always looking to harness, their ability there.
As we were talking earlier, there's a lot of scrutiny. There's a lot of pressure, I imagine, with your job, whether it's, from employees or stakeholders or, politicians, governments, the public, you name it. So how do you kind of cope with the stresses that come with the job when those arise?
Two things. I always think it's part of my responsibility when you're running a big company, which is an important role to play. I view it as both an opportunity and a privilege, and with that comes that responsibility to engage, explain what we do, and so internalize that as an aspect and as a duty of my job. And so I think that gives me perspective as I go through it. doesn't mean every day. There are days when I'm like, well, I wish I could be spending more time on products, but I accept it as a part of what I do.
So you joined in 2004. It's been a while. I just would like to ask, is Google still googly, as they like to say, and how have you seen it evolve?
Well, the notion of googliness, like with everything else, is constantly evolving, right? It's defined by the people in the company, and it is something which evolves over time. But if I go back to it's a community of people who are passionate about leaving an impact in the world through the products they build and otherwise, and are motivated and believe in collaborating, believing in using their voice to make a difference in the world. Those aspects are all still as alive today as ever before.
What would you say, Sundar, has been your biggest leadership lesson in your time so far? Maybe even the hardest one that you had to go through?
I think the biggest part about leadership, there are many aspects. I think making sure as a leader that you're making the important decisions and consequential decisions. And there are few of them, and you need to do them, and you need to do them with clarity, and then need to bring that organization along. And it could be in a product area like pivoting the company to making sure, understanding the importance of AI, mobile or AI, and pivoting the company and doing that with clarity. It could be clearly articulating the importance of diversity and inclusion in the company and making it a value and then working hard to achieve that. But it's getting those consequential moments right, I think, is one of the more important parts of leadership. I've
also heard that at any given time, Google kind of keeps a list of like the most important problems that they want to solve. What would you say is top of your list? Now, you mentioned search earlier as a moonshot, but what are the top 3 items on your list right now? I think making more progress in AI and doing it responsibly, because I think it is such a profound way of impacting the world. It's definitely at the top of my list. I'm very excited about quantum computing, though it'll probably take 5 to 10 years, but I can see the early signs of progress, and very, very exciting to me. So I'm glad you mentioned quantum computing. For the everyday person, that was actually a really cool presentation you all gave on that. For the everyday person, what would that mean? I know you were very excited when you got quantum supremacy, but what would it mean for the everyday person? For an everyday person, it would mean we will be able to solve modeling the weather. Today, our understanding of weather phenomenon is very poor because nature is very complex, and our computers today are limited because they just don't have the ability to simulate something like that. So you would get much better weather forecasts with a quantum computer one day, right? As an example of be better able to predict hurricanes, cyclones, tornadoes with more accuracy than ever before. Design far better batteries than we use today. So it'll affect things at a foundational level. Foundational level. One final question for you. What keeps you up at night? I think, I realize it's a privilege to serve billions of people, and making sure we are respecting that opportunity and doing it well, and we are bringing the best we can as a company, and not becoming complacent and, just resting on your laurels is something that keeps me up at night. And, I think big companies can easily get into that mode. And so staying hungry, making sure we are earning our trust and our opportunity to serve users every day is something that keeps me at night. Sundar Pichai, Google CEO, Alphabet CEO, I thank you so much for your time and having us here in Mountain View. Thank you. Thanks, Julia. Pleasure.